Good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us for this conversation on the future of Chicago restaurants. My name is Shannon Morrissey, and I'm the preceptor for the Chicago Studies program here at the University of Chicago. This conversation is the first in a series of virtual discussions we're facilitating on the topic of Chicago futures. So in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, many of us are wondering, what does the future of American cities and city life look like? So in tandem with scholarly presentations and sort of imaginings of future cities, we also wanted to talk with professionals in some of the industries that have been most impacted by the pandemic. And something I think that has been made abundantly clear, if it wasn't already, is just how much we all rely on the food and beverage industry, not just to meet immediate needs of hunger, but also for the atmosphere, the camaraderie, and the connections that happen over a shared meal, or even just sort of the calm that comes from sipping a cup of tea at a neighborhood cafe. So not to romanticize those days too much. I mean, I know hopefully with vaccines and all of this underway, we'll be back to kind of pseudo-normal or a return to sort of normal. But I do think that these moments, are kind of what we all have been taking for granted or were taking for granted prior to this time. So all that to say, many of us feeling especially grateful for workers in the food and beverage and hospitality industries, and yet these industries took a really hard hit when business couldn't carry on as usual. So between March 2020 and today, it's estimated that over 2 million people lost their jobs, and over 100,000 restaurants had to close their doors just in the US. So, this conversation today, we're sort of asking ourselves and then getting some expert advice, what changes have been made to ensure that restaurants can open safely, both for customers and especially for employees. How can we continue to support restaurants and restaurant workers? And what do professionals in the industry predict or sort of project or hope for the future, kind of as we hopefully get back to a little bit more normal? So I'm excited to be joined by a panel of 4 folks who have on-the-ground experience and expertise addressing these questions. I will give each panelist a chance to introduce themselves and share their background in the industry, and then we'll dive into some questions. So I've got some questions prepared, but there will be plenty of time for questions from the audience or panelists. If you have questions you'd like to discuss among yourselves, I definitely welcome that too. But to get us started with introductions, if I could ask Mr. Amr Abdullah to kick us off.
Hi, Shannon. Thanks for the introductions. And hello, everyone. My name is Amr Abdullah. I'm the owner of Cedars. We're a restaurant here on 53rd and Woodlawn in Kimbark Plaza. I've been the owner for the last 2 years. I've been in the business for, on and off for 30 years since I was a kid. My father opened up Cedars in Hyde Park in 1992, but truth be told, it was opened in the back stockroom of a grocery store called Harper Foods on 57th and Harper in 1985. I always say he introduced the Chicago community of falafel. I'm sure someone else was making it, but he kind of made it in the back stockroom. And my dad is a old school Palestinian man. So he was the visual I'll give you guys to understand where his history comes from. Picture a lit Marlboro sitting on a milk crate in the back stock room, a little wok, a couple gallons of vegetable oil, and just, frying falafel in the back. All illegal, all unsafe, no HVAC. That Marlboro was just asking for that oil. And then, of course, getting shut down by the city multiple times because he just didn't understand how that works. And from there, 35 plus years ago, Cedars is what it is today. I went to the University of Chicago. I spent 4 years as an undergrad, and then went on to Wall Street. I spent time in Manhattan and Chicago. I then moved into the world of acting for the last 7 or 8 years. Comedy, I do improv, stand-up, all sorts of other acting, but comedy is my favorite. And in Cedars, I try and bring elements of that into the restaurant, which I think has helped us to some degree during the pandemic. That is a little bit of an introduction about me.
Great. Thank you so much, Amr. And I'm not sure if you remember, but I think one of the last restaurants I ate at was Virtue before we all heard about the coronavirus. And the last catering order that I got for a UChicago event was from Cedars. So it's kind of amazing that these are the two restaurants we have today. So let me pass it next to Jesus Garcia.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for having me here. My name is Jesus Garcia. I'm the general manager and partner at Virtue Restaurant here in Hyde Park. I've been in the industry I started in 2000, so it's 20 some years in the industry. I've worked in various positions at MK, from back waiter, front server, bartender. I eventually became a manager, then the general manager before the opportunity to be a partner at Virtue presented itself. Truth be told, I didn't know much about Hyde Park except for the location. I was raised on the north side, so all my life was on the north side, and I didn't really know much about the south side in general. But I knew Hyde Park seemed to be a progressive neighborhood. There's a lot of development up and down the block, so I knew that the location could work for a restaurant and the concept. And here we are 2 years into it. All of our experiences, nothing will ever prepare you to deal with a pandemic. It's something that's very unique. It's a very different challenge that nobody was really prepared for, right? Here we are a year into not having a sense of normal, has proven to have its own challenges. And just how it's changed the industry moving forward, I think it's something that it's just something to kind of look into and analyze. And so here we are.
Thank you, Jesus. Yeah, I think you're totally right that in some ways things will be forever changed by this. So I'm really excited to get into that and hear folks' thoughts on it. So our last two panelists, it was like total serendipity that I learned of this startup the same week that we began planning for this conversation. But I'll let them introduce themselves. But they're co-founders of a new data analytics platform specializing in everything, I think, from sales to marketing of small restaurants and small businesses. So it was like great timing, and I know they have varying levels of experience and kind of history in the industry themselves. So let me pass it first to Omar Hernandez.
Thank you, Shannon. Very excited to be here. Hi, everyone. My name is Omar Hernandez. I'm a current graduate student at Illinois Institute of Technology, majoring in database management and analytics. Before going to IIT, I actually worked at a couple of tech startups around the city. So I have a lot of familiarity with disrupting old industries and applying technology to solve solve problems. In terms of my personal connection with the food and beverage industry, my mom, she's managed the Nuts on Clark location for like the last 20 years. And really what inspired me to help was the fact that she had lost her job back in March. So that really affected me. Like not just my mom, but a bunch of my other friends had also lost their jobs. And I was trying to find a way to help. And that was pretty much it.
Thanks. And then Kevin Haynes.
Yeah, thank you, Shannon. Again, very excited to be here. So my name is Kevin Haynes, and I'm co-founder of Perspectives. Essentially, we're a business intelligence software designed specifically for independent restaurants and cafes. My background in the hospitality industry, I've held almost every position in front of house for the last 10 years, working in high school, college, and then even post-college. Most recently, I've been bartending. I was at, different hotels, Soho House, the Roby Hotel, some Michelin star restaurants, Punch House and Deus Ex. So my familiarity within the industry is fairly strong. I had always had a passion for the industry, and my goal was to be an owner operator such as yourselves. So Unfortunately, when the pandemic hit, I was bartending at the time, and I did unfortunately lose my job, like a lot of other of my friends and coworkers in the industry. My background is in advertising and sales. So Omar and I actually met at a digital advertising agency downtown. We were doing consulting for major Fortune 500 companies like Kohl's, Discover, Verizon, Kraft, and we were looking at analytics most of the time. So our background more or less kind of fit into this. And, you know, once we had some time off with the shutdowns, we kind of put our heads together and thought, you know, the industry definitely needs help with regards to data analysis. And we think that's going to be the future for restaurants and owners, operators. So really developing a way for that to be automated and for that to essentially ease the transition and the learning curve for a lot of owners and operators with regards to data analytics. So once again, I'm super honored to be here and part of this discussion.
Thanks again, all of you, for taking time out of your Friday afternoon to join us for this. So I think I have to ask sort of the obvious question to get started. I mean, the headlines around restaurants during the pandemic have tended to focus on job loss, restaurants closing doors, but I'm curious how the pandemic has affected your business in particular, or the restaurant industry, beyond sort of those sort of headline catching changes. So sort of day-to-day operations, have you had to adapt to new sort of technologies or ways of doing your business as a result of the pandemic? And whoever wants to kick us off, feel welcome.
So I'll start. So the way it's affected Virtue, to be specific, obviously not having people or being able to take guests in hurt the bottom line, but more importantly, it just didn't allow us to be sustainable under the same business model. It didn't allow us to continue to keep our team together. Part of why everybody shows up to work is to earn an income, right? So we went from having 35 people employed to now 10, you know, and we felt that under the business model, having 10 people was kind of pushing it, but we wanted to make sure that, you know, those who chose not to work, not to take the hours, that chose to ride it out with unemployment, that, you know, we honor that decision. And the people who didn't have access to unemployment or just wanted to continue working, that those were the people who were in the building helping us, making the sacrifice of showing up, taking the risk by showing up to work. Obviously was one of the things that got affected. And, you know, just seeing the sacrifices that everybody had to make with not being able to afford, you know, their way of living was something that, unfortunately, there's only so much we can do. We obviously, but it taught us how to adjust on the fly by doing GoFundMe campaigns. It also, one of the things that it really highlighted was the generosity in people in the neighborhood, a community that is very proud of its restaurants. And just to see the generosity that was pouring in from people who had dined here once, from old coworkers, it was just great to see, right? So that helped us keep our team intact. But just overall, I think the biggest key has been adjusting on the fly, because this thing, we didn't see it coming, and all of a sudden it just hit us, and nobody was prepared. Like I said in my introduction, nothing will ever prepare you for a pandemic. But if you're able to make the adjustment on the fly, you know, you can make it far. And here we are, still standing. We want to continue to be part of the community. But I think the biggest thing that has taught us is making adjustments on the fly. Because there could be a day where we can only afford to have 5 people here, right? And those 5 people have to be able to produce 10 or 15, right? You just got to be really efficient with your time management and still deliver the same level of hospitality. But I think the adjustment part is something that is still a work in progress.
Thank you, Jesus. Yeah, man, that I would basically second every single thing Jesus just said. We did the same exact thing at Cedars. I'll lead off with the same thing. Sales, day one of pandemic, down 85%, obviously. And the other 15% was mostly gift cards from generous human beings. And like a few brave souls who were like, give me my falafel sandwich, I need it, you know? So it was bizarre, but it was weird. So that was day one. And then staff, yeah. I mean, for us, we had close to 20, maybe 18 full-time staff, or full and part-time, and that was just sliced in half to 9. That's probably where we still stand right now, 9. So yeah, that's kind of the headline stuff. But I think your question is good, Shannon. Beyond the headline, what's up? You know, we made a move within 4 to 6 weeks. We changed our business model. I come from a Wall Street background. I actually had a front row seat to 2008. I'm 40 years old. So at that time I was in my late 20s and I was a front office sales and trader at JP Morgan. So, and some of my clients were Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, big banks that were literally, I was watching them kind of sink and it was crazy. So that late 20s experience did inform a lot of how I approached this pandemic. So I was like, okay, my motto to the staff and to myself and to my family is, guys, it's really a Charles Darwin evolutionary moment. This is it for the restaurant industry. This is it. You know, only survival of the fittest is going to apply here. So we changed our business model instantly to fast casual. We left the world of full service. It was crystal clear that I wasn't coming back anytime soon. I made that judgment call. And myself and I will say a person, kind of the general manager here, Kenan Mufti, we sat and put our heads together along with our chef Amado Lopez, as well as a couple other people, my brother, and we're like, we're becoming fast casual. We want to be, you know, a Middle Eastern version of Pompeii on Taylor, a Middle Eastern version of Vapiano's, a Middle Eastern version of Nando's, if you will. So we converted to that, and that has served us really, really well. We sliced our menu, I would say, more than half. And so we took the motto of, based on Charles Darwin and evolution and survival of the fittest, adapt or die. We needed that black and white mentality to keep us going for another 28 years. Adapt or die. And that was literally kind of pasted on the walls, pasted on our minds. We kind of got extreme about it. And I think I pulled from a lot of my 2008 experience with the financial crisis. Other ways it changed us more, I would say at a deeper level, spiritually, I think we had to call upon our reserves, our spiritual strength. We wanted to surround ourselves with the right people. We had a big turnover of staff. We lost 6 or 7 people and took on 6 or 7 people and interviewed with the primary intention of, are these positive, good human beings? Are they kind, courteous, thoughtful, hopeful? Are they practicing some sort of spiritual practice, whatever that might mean for each individual person? And so we've successfully done that. That was starting in probably June. We made that conversion, July, August, the summer. And so what happened was, instead of doing temperature, we were taking temperatures and doing all that stuff for a while, but I was like, you know what? I can't, what I need is honesty. A thermometer is good, but truth be told, I just need to hear from someone like, how do you feel? That's going to save our business more than a thermometer, I thought. So communication increased dramatically. We just would constantly update our staff with the headlines, talk to them about it. And so our connection and our communication, our family essence increased. And that was probably one of the biggest changes that helped us. And that positive energy was like, wait, why can't we be the #1 takeout restaurant in Hyde Park, for example? You know, that was kind of the constant question, and asking that question all the time. And of course, you know, with that came people's ideas then of how do we keep everything healthier for our customers and our guests. So obviously the masks, obviously the gloves, obviously the extra cleanings. When someone did come down with coronavirus, we took swift action. We had a whole plan in place that included everyone to do deep cleaning and that kind of thing. And we did a whole bunch of, everyone would test. We did contact tracing. We already knew where we're going to test at this certain place in Tinley Park, so on and so forth. The last thing, let's say the last change was social media. We rolled up our sleeves and became social media, you know, addicts. So we realized that everyone has already been on their phone 4 to 5 hours a day pre-pandemic. That can only increase post-pandemic. And so we just, all of us, from Jorge, our lead line cook, we're all just like, yo, you're going to start doing TikToks. Sorry, that you're a funny guy and then you dance and that's what you're going to do. And we're going to start really owning what the world needs right now. And on day one, it was feeding frontliners. So we shifted to feeding frontliners right away as our primary. Once we saw sales down 85%, it was like, okay, we're clearly not going to get guests. Let's just focus on hospitals and police districts. And that became a thing on social media. Like, hey guys, we're trying to feed 200 hospital workers at, you know, Christ Hospital. Here's a link, go. And sure enough, $5 here, $5 there, $5 here, $5 there. It worked like a charm, and it really helped us cover the basic needs in those first 3 to 4 months. So I'd say those are the 4 big changes. Was, you know, sales and staff instantly down. We changed our business model. We saw it as an evolutionary moment. And so we had to just think adapt or die. We connected with our staff and found more spiritual people, more positive people that actually found that an important aspect of their lives. We thought that would be very valuable. And then lastly, social media. And it's only been ramping up with social media. It began with the Feeding Frontliners campaigns, and now it's just, we're doing some of the wackier, funner stuff with social media that we never thought we'd be doing. I'll stop there.
Yeah, and Jesus, you guys kind of hit the nail on the head there. Completely agree with everything you both said. I will add to that point, do feel technology was absolutely another key aspect and another major change for a lot of restaurants. What I mean by that is that, you know, a lot of businesses were running in some sort of analog fashion. But now with the pandemic and the new mandates, a lot of businesses were forced to, you know, go digital. What that includes, you know, using QR codes for menus as opposed to having a physical menu. You know, having contactless ordering and contactless payments. You know, using third-party delivery services such as Uber Eats, DoorDash, and Grubhub to help with delivery services of their business. You know, enlisting online ordering on Google or through some other online ordering platform. And then in addition, enlisting some sort of website where a business can actually, you know, promote, you know, not only their menu, but allow customers to order from there. So that's a major change we've seen. It seems like it wasn't relevant for you two specifically because you guys already had some of those in place. But for a lot of small independent restaurants and cafes, those were changes that they had to make. And what we see is that, yes, with third-party delivery services, I don't want to get too much into it. I feel very strongly about those services, but you know, their predatory practices, you know, have been curbed a little bit with the city's mandate, you know, preventing, you know, these companies from charging too much on the net sales for specific orders. Not only that, but these companies are very restrictive of the data that they actually provide back to the business owners and operators. So with regards to that, that was a major hurdle that we saw in the industry, is a lot of businesses kind of, you know, stuck and pigeonholed by these companies. However, it seems like with some of the mandates, relaxing, more business or more customers able to come in and dine in store. And yeah, so and with regards to that, I think technology has been a major shift.
I want to pick up on a couple things that folks said, because I think it's worth highlighting. So basically, both Virtue and Cedars, like in the first couple weeks, were like, okay, totally new business model. Like that level of adaptation, I think it isn't too extreme to call it like survival mode. And yeah, it's kind of incredible. I also want to point out that in the midst of that, support for frontline workers and ensuring payment to staff and other workers were like top of mind. And I think that's worth applauding. Cedars and Virtue both had this as kind of part of their response, making sure that they're taking care of their own. I think that's pretty amazing. And then to Kevin's point, like, gosh, how do we adopt new technology? Sometimes it does involve third-party providers, but this change in business model, like if you're primarily a fine dining and all of a sudden now most of your meals are carry out, what does that look like logistically? So kind of touching on that, are there changes you think that you've made during this time that will stick? And I'll let anyone grab that question first, but are there things either, will this new business model sort of be the plan going forward, or will you kind of compromise with kind of old ways and this new adaptation?
I think for us specifically, it definitely helped us discover a new revenue center, being to-go. For the longest time, we didn't do to-go because we wanted to, we felt like we were so busy in-house that we just wanted to simply get things right in-house, right? It didn't make a ton of sense for us to send, our short rib and a catfish, not knowing exactly how it traveled, how it got to someone's house. Was it a true representation of what we were trying to do here in-house? And for the longest time, we got people who would be upset that we weren't doing to-go. So when we had to shift, right, it goes back to making an adjustment. So we had to shift and kind of test on the fly. We would put food in boxes and let it sit, in a bag for 45 minutes to an hour, and then taste it just to see how it would hold up, right? Just to kind of simulate that travel time that a guest would do, right? Just to see what it tasted like once it got to their house. And of course, we made the adjustment of putting certain sauces on the side, purees on side, just to make sure it didn't disrupt the integrity of the dish. So from that perspective, it helped us adjust. But I think moving forward, it did. We definitely are going to keep the to-go moving forward, because who knows, right? Maybe when restaurants do reopen at 100% capacity, maybe there won't be such a demand for to-go. But I feel like for the foreseeable near future, I think there is an opportunity to gain, right? Maybe a great night in to-go, like on a day when it's like snowing and there's a blizzard outside and nobody wants to go out, you might be able to offset some of the losses for the day if you have a strong day, a strong representation for to-go on that particular day. So it's one of those things where it gives you a better chance of winning, of getting a win for the day. So moving forward, I definitely think that. And just to touch back on what everybody was saying with technology, for us, just getting to know or manage our online ordering system, right? It wasn't something that we thought about, but taking on that extra expense, some of the vendors that we work with were kind enough to provide us with, some discounts during the time of the pandemic, which was great to see, bigger companies kind of take the loss with you. And we made an emphasis with all of our vendors, right? We want to make sure that everybody we want to support as much farmers as we can, as much distributors as we can, but we got to take the loss together, right? because we want you to be here when it's good. We want you to be here when it's bad. And I think just moving forward, I think getting to negotiate those terms is one of the things that we have had to adjust to.
For us, I looked at it to answer the question of how much of the changes that we made will be permanent or will there be some kind of compromise. I think it just in the spirit of survival of the fittest attitude, adapt or die. I think everything restaurants have been like Virtue and Cedars have been forced to do, like feed frontliners, do to-goes, acquire the technology. Like I really believe it's just more survival of the fittest, meaning people are still, like I had to remind myself, like people are still eating. Sure, let's say 50% of people don't want to eat because of safety. Great. There's still 50% more. Like that's a decent number. So I was like, well, wait a minute. If we just become like the best restaurant, then this whole Corona thing is not a big worry. Like you kind of rise to the top and you become a top choice for many people. So I just think it forced restaurants who were capable of leveling up their game to either level up their game or exit the industry. I'm sad that it's that black and white and crude, but I think it's kind of that simple. And if you're ready to hustle and get the right positive people in there, get the right technology in there. So for example, feeding frontliners, like Cedars has given to this organization or that organization for 28 years. That's been a good thing. Okay, we're part of the community. But truth be told, like, come on, like we could have did way better than that. Like way better than that. You know, God rest my father's soul. Like he'd feed a homeless person here. He'd give to this organization. He'd give to that organization. I'm so proud of him. He taught me a lot to do that. And I was like, well, wait a minute. Why aren't restaurants doing like way more of that during the pandemic? Okay, let's attack. And now post-pandemic, it's like, yes, we should feed. So for example, we just shifted from feeding frontliners as our focus to feeding the poverty stricken. Here we are a year in on Corona, and we did the Englewood Winter Wonderland, provided 150 meals. Next week, we're providing 150 meals, 120 meals to visitation by connecting with Big Shoulders Fund. And I'm just now on the prowl for like, who's the next 5 or 10 that I can do in February? Not just because of it'll keep us alive, but also because it's like, it's kind of what we should be doing, you know, like is to give back to our community in that way. Like it's just the right thing to do. Obviously, you don't do it to put yourself out of business, but you know, could we do more than a tray of hummus to this organization once a month? Yeah, of course. So that's the idea, and I'm all for that, partnering for all these nonprofits and just kind of getting creative with that. So I think all the changes that have been made, every single one should absolutely stay. And at the same level they're at now. And in addition to that, and by the way, that includes gloves, masks. I don't think masks should go anywhere, for God's sakes. I've been less sick the last year, you know, thankfully, because of me wearing a mask and everyone else wearing a mask. I used to get sick once a month. Now it's like once every 5-6 months. I'm like, hey, this is good. So I'm imagining a better world. And then, so let's say things do go back to normal to some degree, then yeah, staple on indoor dining, and it'll just be a better, safer experience overall, I think. So yeah, I feel very strongly that changes not only are gonna stay, but should stay, and at the level they should. And then as indoor dining slowly resumes, I think that'll just be kind of stapled on, and that's the world we live in. And guess what? That means 100,000 restaurants should go out of business, sadly, because you know, it's survival of the fittest. It's adapt or die. It's that reality that we're living in. Remember, any mom and pop can hang a shingle outside and open up a restaurant. There's really very little barriers to entry. But that has all changed now. That has completely changed. It's almost like starting something more complicated now. I'll stop there.
I
agree with Amir.
Yeah, I agree with you. Omar, you can take it.
Definitely, that's something that I've noticed. Speaking with a couple of the restaurant partners that we've been working on, is the fact that they need to adopt digital channels such as online ordering and definitely third-party delivery. But to your point, I do agree. Think that if any businesses that weren't using these digital channels previously are not going to survive into the future. Kevin, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, and like I said, I agree with you, Amir. I think this has been a natural selection process for the restaurant industry, for those that are able to rise above this. To some extent, I feel, I'll speak to the consumer. I don't think the consumer mindset is going to change from this. Technology is a tidal wave that is unstoppable to fight against. So that new expectations are that a consumer can go on their mobile phone and be able to order online, be able to order delivery, be able to get all access to the restaurant's information, have day-to-day updates on whether or not it's open for business, the capacity level, because of the mandates and how everything's been so finicky, and it's almost like new updates are at the drop of a hat. Information is going to be critical for the business owner, and consumers are going to expect that type of information. So I don't think that's ever going to change. I think that's the new expectation. Sure, there are cash only businesses, and sure, there are businesses without websites, but I think those are a dying breed, and that's not the new model. So yeah.
I'll add one more thing, Kevin and Omar. Social media. I mean, what world did we live in? Again, I'm 40, so I might be. I grew up on TV, guys. Tons of cartoons, tons of television, tons of Brady Bunch, all that stuff. And I only saw commercials for Chevy, Ford, all those big companies. It's wacky that I can drop $10 and reach 2,000 people in the 3 blocks around me. It's a wacky idea. $10, come on. So like everyone is spending, instead of 5 or 6 hours on TV, on their phone, and I can actually talk to them. Bizarre. So that should not change at all. The fact that we ramped up our Kenan Mufti, the guy who basically runs Cedars here, he looked at me in the early days. He's like, hey man, if you don't have a substantial online presence as a restaurant, you kind of don't exist. And I kind of knew that in my soul, but he verbalized it, and it's just so true. And so sadly, that's the world we live in. You can't just walk around and consumers can't just necessarily walk around and walk into your restaurant. That marketing does work, but really, that's kind of your marketing plan is hope there. And what you really need to do is, I think, and we have changed into a world where we use social media actively, generously, to talk to our guests and potential consumers, and that should not change as well.
Yeah, I like to call it like, I say this, but foot traffic has more or less gone digital. So if that's not a realistic, the original foot traffic, that's not really a marketing strategy any longer. So if businesses can start thinking of foot traffic being digital, I think they'll have a great chance of succeeding and having longevity in this industry.
One caveat I was thinking about to the sort of natural selection process, which I think largely is very true, is restaurants whose primary guests and customers were the ones who faced job loss. I mean, I do wonder if for some restaurants there was sort of an insurmountable challenge in attracting, retaining an entirely new audience. Just something to consider. But I do think like a lot of what you mentioned about sort of the online presence being the equivalent of foot traffic is so true. I'm curious if you can think of any sort of unsolved problems related to reopening or indoor dining or sort of the future of restaurants that might be interesting to mull over with this group.
I'd say square footage. So here we are, Cedars. We've got close to 4,000 square feet. 2,000 was a commercial kitchen upstairs, second floor, which we catered tons of around Chicago. That's gone to zero, literally. So that's a sad reality there. And I'm exploring like, hey, should I become a shared kitchen and food trucks can come work out of this kitchen? But that's kind of a headache right now. But I'm looking into it. And then we got 2,000 square feet in the first floor, of which I use maybe 25%, like 500 square feet to cook and hand orders to drivers or guests. So here I am with 3,500 square feet. I'm paying for it. It doesn't make any sense. So that problem will only be solved once it's revealed how we exit this challenge of Corona. I don't see an immediate solution. If hypothetically, excuse me, this whole thing is resolved by March 1st, because 250 million Americans have the vaccine, and they all hypothetically go back to normal by April 1st. Okay, then I guess that problem's solved. But I don't really see that. I don't really see that happening in 2021 anytime soon.
Yeah, I'll speak to that as well, Amir. So I think square footage is a huge issue for restaurants as well. Not only that, but these big third-party delivery services, as well as large corporate entities, they're developing ghost kitchens. So ghost kitchens are obviously, they range in how they appear, but it's essentially just a kitchen with maybe a chef or two cooking up delivery and takeout orders only. So in terms of what that means for the industry, right? Essentially, they're creating delivery and takeout only businesses, don't have the overhead of a full staff, don't have the overhead of square footage, with all the bills and all the expenses that come along with that. With regards to that being gone, come, mandates being released, that I don't think that's going to be the case. There's too much money already invested in these ghost kitchens for it to essentially fail. There's a lot of VC backing within these companies, and that is one of their business models, is to use the data that they're receiving and earning from these restaurants to then in turn develop ghost kitchens to compete against said restaurants. So we think it's a very critical moment in the restaurant industry to start thinking about data, start safeguarding your data, because these big players, they will undercut a lot of small mom and pop restaurants or other restaurants because they have full access to what your customers are purchasing. They know how much your customers are purchasing from where, where they live, how often, what time. These are all valuable data points which can generate insights for them to optimize and essentially develop to corner the market, more or less. So we feel like that is not going to change. There's too much money already invested in it. So that to us is going to be another thing or another aspect of the industry that restaurants are going to have to combat.
Jesus, anything you'd add about sort of unsolved problems in the industry that are posed either by reopening or kind of the uncertainty of the next 6 months to year? Oh, I think you're muted. Let me double check.
You're right, I am. I'm sorry about that. So the only thing that I can think of as kind of unsolved, and there's really nothing you can do about, is staffing from day to day. All right, and I think it's more of a mental aspect, because we've had instances where somebody wakes up in the morning and sneezes 2 times, coughs 3 times. All of a sudden, it's like, you rather err on the side of caution, but it just opens the door for, there might be a day where you might be missing 2, 3 people that you are depending on to have a successful shift. right? Like, what do you do then? Like, how do you adapt for that particular day, right? There might be somebody who's off that day who is unavailable because they have taken on another side job just to meet, just to make it through the week, right? And so what do you, there's only so much you can do, right? You got to rely on the people that you have know, the network. You might be able to help get some assistance for that day, but just the mental aspect of feeling like you have the virus, and just being precautious and erring on the side of caution, which I can understand, right? But what do you do as an operator, right, if you're depending on that person?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And especially not knowing what, like how quickly everyone is going to be vaccinated, and just the uncertainty of yeah, it's definitely an ongoing challenge. At this point, I do want to see if we have any questions from audience members and folks listening in. So if you do have a question, go ahead and use the raise hand function, and then I'll have you ask it. I should say, if you're more comfortable typing it in the chat, that is also an option. I can read it out for you. Panelists, any questions you have for each other?
Yeah, I was actually going to ask Jesus, Amir, with the advent of vaccinations, this is just something I'm curious about, but what are your plans or strategies with vaccinations with your staff and essentially the whole restaurant team?
I believe we are considered 1C. So I think we're with essential workers in the 1C category with grocery store workers. So I'm fortunate enough to have family members who are in the medical industry. So they're kind of keeping me up to date and giving me kind of some inside info when they got their vaccinations and when I might be able. So I'm trying to get them to be first in line, if you will. Again, survival of the fittest. Like I want to be able to say and my staff and team be on the wheel. Let's get them back.
I'm having this moment of, is Amr breaking up for everyone or just me? Yeah, okay. Anyone else want to answer Kevin's question?
Yes.
Oh, great.
So the majority of our staff is for getting the vaccine. Obviously, there's still some concerns in regards to the side effects, but for the most part, everybody's on board with getting the vaccine. I know my business partner Eric, he wants to explore the options, and I know that one of the questions was that I'm seeing in the chat was, what role do we play in that? And of course, doing the research, finding out the locations where they can get vaccinated is something that we'll go above and beyond and make sure that everybody has access to at least the information, right? And I don't know exactly what the cost is going to be, but if it's for the best, I'm happy to split the charge with the team members to make sure it's it's not just for us, right? It's for the safety of everyone, and that's the most important part. Is that do the research, find out when and where, and of course scheduling it right. We're closed on Mondays and Tuesdays, and just making sure that everybody has time to recover from the vaccine, So obviously that's a challenge of its own, but it's, I think, a challenge that will hopefully make things easier for everyone.
I have a question for you, Kevin, and Omar. So to the extent that you guys have been aware of iOS 14 release, what I've been hearing, reading, learning about iOS 14 is it's kind of a dramatic change to how Apple gives out its users' info to Facebook, for example. And so now, I might have, I love, Southern cooking as a like of mine on Facebook, or I've shown that I like Virtue, for example. But Apple, I can opt out now going forward using iOS 14. I can opt out of letting Facebook know that information. And so then, Jesus at Virtue won't be able to actually target me and send me a cool Virtue plating of an awesome short rib. And boom, now it's harder for him to reach me. And so me and Keenan have been like, oh my God, we need to really now more than ever own our data and know our customers. Have you guys in the technology world around restaurants, do you have awareness around that? Do you have opinions around that? Have you done any homework around that? Do you think that's a big impact on restaurants going forward?
I personally think that restaurants are going to have to manage more than just their social media data. They're going to have to manage their ordering data as well as any of their financial data to be completely optimized in every single category that they can be. In terms of the social media aspect, though, I am totally against it. I don't think that we should necessarily be sharing all of our information with Facebook, and I don't agree with their practice of how they openly sell our data to other companies. So that's something that Kevin and I are really against, and that's something that we don't do personally with our company. We want to make sure that if anyone that we work with, they consider us a partner and they know that their data is safe with us, so that and it's not being used by any other malicious or third-party characters.
Yeah, I'll just add real quick to that. I think it's easy to use these services with the understanding that they're going to use your data, right? Some of us know that they are using our data, some of us don't. So that could come to shock to some, but it's a difficult conversation, right? Some of us might think privacy is a thing of the past, right? How do we keep our customer data, private? It's sensitive information. Do I agree with what Apple and Facebook are doing? No. I think, but do I understand the business side of it? Absolutely. Data is really the gold that a lot of these major tech companies are using to help supplement, their business. So, am I want to hate on that? No, but from a consumer standpoint, I think it's I try to keep my information as private as possible. As a restaurant, I would recommend doing the same and being very cautious about which services to use and how they're using your data. That would just be my recommendation on that.
I'd love to end with this question that Chris put in the chat, and I think it reminds me too of Amar's point about knowing how where staff are getting sort of reserves for hope during this time, which has really been difficult for everyone, regardless of industries we work in, just as people too. So what's been getting you through? Are there moments of grace throughout the past year that you find yourself drawing on and thinking about?
Yeah, I would reiterate kind of what I said earlier, which was Jesus actually nailed it in the beginning, the generosity of the community. That's probably been the number. Yeah, that's probably been the number one thing. I think that kind of love is powerful. And that's better than any fear. That just wins all day long. Me personally, I'm Muslim. I practice praying. I practice a little meditation. I practice whatever I can do. I'm spending extra time with my kids. They're just, it's like the equivalent of having 10 cats or 20 cats. They're just amazing. I think there's been moments where a random person will call me. There's this wonderful guy named James. They'll call, just random people call me. Hey, I wanna buy lunch for University of Chicago ER for 150 people. They helped me get through XYZ when I was at UFC. Here's $1,500. It's like, whoa. That is like, that'll drive you for a week, because it's just like, who is this woman in New York City doing this? Or this whole group of Bank of America, team bought lunch for a different ER, and so on and so forth. So there's those moments. So personal, spiritual is important to me. The generosity of the community and people just calling out of left field. And then, we're all saying we're in this together. We can't get through this, but I think drilling a couple layers deeper on what that means is what I was talking about earlier, which is like, well then look for those kinds of people who really believe get through this together. And that's kind of what we tried to do, me and Keenan here, is look for people who are intentional about being positive, being hopeful, seeing the best in the situation. So we've been super lucky to have staff like that. And that's those three things got us through that, I would say, are getting us through this. So that's a great question. Thank you.
I think you talked about what have our team members done, right? Like digging into reserves or just figuring out how to get through the weeks. Some of our staff members took on, construction jobs, odd jobs that kind of with family and friends. So that kind of helped us, scratch off some names off the list that we needed to like really be worried about. There were some who felt that had conditions where they just didn't want to take the risk, and we weren't about to force them to take unnecessary risk with their health. So we have helped our team members bridge the gap on certain occasions, just to make sure they have an opportunity to cover rent, get groceries, allow their family to have food on the table. But we only do that. The only way we have a chance to do that is by the support of the community. I was blown away by the generosity of one person in particular who donated to our GoFundMe account. I want to say like 8 weeks in a row. Every single Monday, we woke up at 8:30 in the morning and got a notification that this person had donated the same amount for 8 weeks in a row. And it was just absolutely mind-blowing to see the kindness in someone, that they've been to the restaurant maybe 4 times, right? They have a particular table. Our team took great care of them, that they felt the need to give to us just to make sure that they got an opportunity to visit us after this pandemic. And that is something that I don't know, it gets me just truly grateful and appreciative of them just thinking about that, right? Giving to us once is generous enough. I mean, let alone 6, 7, 8 times, right? Like I don't know how somebody can do that, right? And we got a chance to, over the summer, where we just on a Wednesday or Thursday, we just called them, asked them if we could take food to their house, and they almost fought me to charge them. And I just said, for the life of me, I cannot charge you for the food that I'm gonna deliver to you, because it just seems like it's the right thing to do, right? We want to take care of dinner one time, right? And if they call, the moment they call in, I mean, I can't wait for them to come in the restaurant and experience Virtue again, because the love that they have shown us, the support that they have shown us, is something that I don't know if we'll ever be able to pay off, right? Like during a time where we truly, truly need it. I mean, there might as well be investors in the restaurant, right?
Yeah, and then everyone kind of mentioned it, generosity being a big one, but I always love hearing it when I'm talking to friends or family or, other businesses, and they're saying, yeah, I don't order through these third-party delivery apps. I make the effort to call into the restaurant. I make the effort to order online through their website. And I love hearing that. And a lot of people do know how much businesses take. These businesses take up to 30% sometimes. So, the fact that a lot of people are making the effort to ensure that the business is able to, have the most profitable channel achieved is, I think, another aspect of that.
That's a great reminder that, of the ways we can support restaurants and continue to is to go the extra step to order directly from them. And I'll also point everyone to the webpage where you registered to be a part of this conversation. There's a link to the Chicago Restaurant Workers Relief Fund. We also, as you may know, Chris Scrable has been facilitating a drawing of our sort of live attendees for gift cards to both Cedars and Virtue. So I'm happy to announce that Amber Handal, you have received the Cedars gift certificate, and Lina Lee, you're the recipient for the Virtue gift certificate. So we'll contact you, process all that, get those to you. But thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope that students, staff, faculty listening in, keep an eye out for another conversation in a couple weeks about the future of Chicago theater. But yeah, thanks so much to our panel. It's been great. I've enjoyed learning from all of you. And yeah, thanks to everyone for joining.
Go support your local restaurants directly. Thanks everyone so much.
Thank you guys.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining. Oh, and they're gone. Whoop, poof, gone.
Yay, 2 winners. And we have their emails from the registration, right?
We should have their, yes, we should have them. Let's see.
Sorry, Chris, were you saying something? I jumped off.
I was just saying thanks so much. It was so great having you in, and really I really appreciated the introduction too of talking about the sort of that element of positivity and sort of what is it that sort of psychologically kept people going through all of this. I think there is this kind of Darwinian calculus that's crucial, right? But there's also this some people don't have the grace or the wherewithal to evolve. It's like they're in a place where they just can't muster that up. What conversation that we're having in 4 weeks is about Chicago nightlife. And we're going to be talking to a friend of mine who is a drag performer in Chicago and a DJ and so on and so forth. But where a lot of performers have been very much thinking all about themselves and, what can I do all by myself? He's been organizing drive-in drag shows in the Chicago area to try and elevate the whole, how do we keep as many of us alive as possible? And I don't know, there's just something to that, I think, about it was just really, it just got me thinking a lot when you were talking about having recourse to spirituality and, the value of having 1 child equals 10 cats, which had me laughing myself sick. Fortunately, I was muted, and so nobody heard that, but it was awesome. But but yeah, it just really, hey Tess, how are you? Tess is our programming coordinator who is driving and kindly joined us even from the car as she was coming back from a forest preserve expedition.
Chris, I would say I think the gift I was given, weirdly enough, was the traumatic experience of 2008. That was kind of what I referred to. It really was
That blew my
bizarre.
mind when you said that. I was like, oh, I was typing furiously and like wanting to pick your brain about it more.
Super bizarre experience.
Yeah.
I was late 20s, kind of had a front row seat. My clients were specifically the ones going underwater,
Yeah.
late hours. And then I personally was like struggling with anxiety from work
Totally.
and from
Yeah.
personal life. And so that was such a difficult experience on me. Insomnia, all sorts of fun stuff that
totally.
we never want to wish upon anyone. That that's when I kicked my spiritual personal practice into higher gear.
Yep.
And began to become a student, frankly, of spirituality and psychology. And I was like, I don't want this to ever happen to me again. And so I think that gift, I've called upon some of the skills I learned there. Because you're right, man. It's not at all natural to be like, oh yeah, let me pull myself up on my bootstraps and completely change my business model. No,
right.
It's called a comfort zone for a reason, So
yeah. And it does make me sad as I think about some of these little tiny mom and pop places that are around. I live up in Rogers Park. Not there now, obviously, but like I think about some of these little places and even the struggles. We wanted to buy dinner for some neighbors of ours who have been watching over our plants. And we called up our favorite mom and pop sushi shop, which is literally a mom and a pop. Like that's the store. And we called them up and it was like, we were like, we want to give you money. Like we want to buy a lot of food from you and send it to our friends. And it is so hard to do that because you haven't been able to make it's just, and on the other hand, it reminds me of like how right at the end, as Jesus was talking, it kind of got me thinking again about the ways in which restaurants do have this like emotional resonance, right? You don't need to be a fancy restaurant for someone to always remember a particular table or a particular booth. Like I used to feel that way about a particular booth at Standy's, which was a total late night dive restaurant up on Granville on the north side when I worked at Loyola, because I'd go there to grade papers at ridiculous o'clock, right? It wasn't great food. It was terrible food. The coffee sucked, but I don't know, like I had a connection to the place, and I think there's a spiritual element to that too. The places where you break bread with people, that I worry that we're going to lose that.
Oh man, we get that all the time. We got so many people coming in here like, they're like 40 and they're like, yeah, I did my 20th birthday here or something like
right.
that. And they're like, I just wanted to get some falafel. I don't even know why. I just wanted to revisit. There's totally that element to restaurants. I mean, when I was at JP Morgan, I was on the other side of things. That's all that the name of the game was, what steaks or wine or drinks or this or that are you gonna break bread over and connect with? That reality could never go away, So I think people are jonesing and chomping at the bit to get back to that.
Yeah.
So one question for you guys: what Chicago Studies? Is it kind of like the Graham School kind of thing, or is it a category in the regular institution where academic credit can be given?
So we're not part of the Graham School, part of the college. So now part of the undergrad curriculum. Since you've got some history with the institution, like it comes out of, so John Boyer, who's the current dean and might have even been dean when you were a student because he's been dean for forever. Okay. So I think as Boyer is like, first of all, he's like an historian of the university. He's written that enormous book about the history of the university. And he keeps writing about the college too, and the history of the curriculum and so on and so forth. So as he's kind of aging into his last terms in the college and thinking about his legacy, he's become a lot more aware of the ways in which the university's curriculum, especially for undergrads, used to take the city a lot more seriously in as something that shapes the life of the mind. And so in the last 10 or 12 years, he started making these kind of incremental moves towards bringing that back into dialogue with the rest of the curriculum. And Chicago Studies as it now exists, which is a college office, like I sit in a position that is roughly parallel to the director of study abroad. So, and John's kind of big vision now is he wants every student who passes through the University of Chicago to have the chance to study abroad, to have the chance to do an internship, and to have the chance to take at least one class that really focuses them in on Chicago. With the idea that those things are going to kind of balance them and give them kind of a broader perspective that's global, but that also really takes the local very seriously, right?
Yep.
So as it sits now, Chicago Studies, you can earn a certificate in Chicago Studies to complement any academic program in the college. And in order to do that, you take 3 classes that you sequence that are focused on some element of the city's life. You do that internship experience or something else that gets you, it can also be employment. It can be professional work that you're doing if you're like a performer or whatever, but you do some sort of significant engagement in the city, and then you can kind of like tailor your final BA project or some other kind of major project work towards a Chicago theme. And that earns you the certificate in Chicago Studies, which piles on top of your major and your minors, right? And then we have courses that are cross-listed as Chicago Studies, sort of across the entire curriculum. And we're also offering these immersion quarters that students can take that are like 3 classes that dive you deep into a particular topic in Chicago. So in the spring, we're doing theater, political life, sustainable renovation, and what's the 4th one that I keep forgetting about? This should really, water, geez, and that's our faculty director. I should really be remembering that. So, you know, like water and sort of ecology around Chicago water. So, you know, it's yeah, it is. It's kind of a welcome corrective. I think there was a period in the university when it was kind of very cerebral and super detached.
Yeah.
And
I remember
now,
I accidentally stumbled into an architecture class because I was so interested in it.
yeah,
And lo and behold, it was all field trips week after week to the Marshall Field House, to the Franklin Wright House.
yeah,
And I was like, whoa, that is like, of the 4-year blur that UFC was for me, that is a shining light, you know?
yeah, totally. And that's kind of the flip side of it. So my title is Director of Chicago Studies and Experiential Learning. And so another big part of my job is making as many of those things happen as possibly can. But we understand that every student can do a class. And so things like this, and, you know, like restaurants, we're evolving as well. This would have been an in-person discussion. Now we do it over Zoom for whoever can show up. We record the thing, we cut it down into a podcast, and we put it out, and it gets, you know, 4 times the audience it would have gotten in person. So,
cool. That's
yeah,
awesome.
so that's the way that, you know, everybody's playing the same game. We're all kind of trying to figure out how to adapt or die.
Yep. Amen. Amen. Well, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you guys selecting me and asking me to jump on.
It was so
Bye-bye.
awesome to be connected to you. Yeah, thanks so much. I look forward to seeing you at Cedars at some point here in the not so distant future. Of course, we won't recognize you because we'll all be wearing masks. And
yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Shannon.
Take care. Thank you,
Bye,
Tess. Tess is in and out, poor thing.
Sorry. Hey.
Cool.
You're okay. It was a little Blair Witch for a few minutes there, but we're good now.
I'm in a rescue test with a bathroom because
Yes, thank you so
poor
much.
thing. Oh my
Yeah.
gracious. Okay,
I
guys,
know.
have fun having coffee. I'll talk to you both later.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you both.
Bye.